everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and our guest today is Julia Zanes. Julia is an artist. The worlds that she creates with paint, paper, puppets, or collage are rich, layered, vibrant with color, and filled with magic and mystery. And we're going to talk about them today with Julia. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm proud to be in the lineup.
Oh, good. Julia, you know, I often start the show asking people where they came from and that kind. Actually, where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, so you're close by.
Yes, yeah, I'm a New Englander anyway.
Uh-huh. And in your childhood, did you do, like, were you the kind of kid that did a lot of painting and drawing?
Yes, I did. I like to make things. I liked making dioramas. We used to have to do that for book reports, and I liked reading. But I was definitely an introverted kid. In rural New Hampshire. In rural New Hampshire,
yes. That's a place to be introverted, right? Yes. Dioramas are really ambitious, though, for kids.
No, these are like the shoe boxes.
Yeah.
Every kid had to do one when you.
Actually, that sounds kind of familiar.
A book report, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. They should still do that.
Yeah, those are fun.
So you grew up in rural New Hampshire, and then you went to Boston for school?
I went to a few different places. I went to Simon's Rock for when I was 15 for a couple years. I went to Bennington for very briefly, and I always told my son I majored in the Ouija board, which is true actually, which is why it was brief. But ultimately, I was art school material, and ultimately I did go to art school. I went to the Art Institute in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So I lived in Boston in between for 2 years, a year and a half.
You and Donald Saff, Donald Saff is your husband, also a painter.
Yes.
And also you have collaborated widely over the course of your connection with him, your marriage with him. And you met at the Gardner Museum back in Boston.
Yes. We were guards at the Gardner Museum. We were security guards, pre-theft.
Yes. Can we hear that story?
Yeah, well, I mean, that sort of is the story, but we wore green polyester jackets. We stood in different rooms, and so I do know the collection really well, because you just stand in the rooms and they circulate you. So it was a great job. It was probably the best job I've ever had. And Donald was a night watchman. So the guy who replaced him was the guy who was taped up when the theft happened.
Really?
Yes. And
do you mean like when he went off duty, he was the next guard to be on?
No. When we quit, we left.
I see.
We went to art school, and the guy who, and it might not even have been immediately after Donald, but the guy who had his job, and he lives in Brattleboro, and you should probably have him on your show and talk about the theft.
Yeah.
But one of the things in that job was that there's a couple of paintings where it's in her will that you have to put flowers in front of them.
Oh.
There's one in the Dutch room. I don't remember which painting, but it's a portrait, and it had to have nasturtium, a bowl of nasturtiums in front of it. And then there's one that's attributed to Bellini. It's Jesus carrying the cross, and it got violets. So if you're a guard going to work, you carry a little bowl of flowers to put in front of one of those two paintings.
That's kind of wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, no, there were a lot of great details. I took an evening class at maybe Mass Art or somewhere, I think it was Mass Art, and I saw a movie by Stan Brakhage, which was called Window Water Baby Watching. But Stan Brakhage, do you know who he is?
No, I don't.
He's just like a pioneer experimental filmmaker, and I just didn't know that world even existed. And so that was his other movies are better, but that one kind of turned me around, or gave me a purpose of what I wanted to do. And he taught at the Art Institute in Chicago, so I said, I'm going there where he is. But he wasn't there anymore when I got there. But his legacy was, and his definitely his aesthetic and just the way film was taught, I think.
So you actually studied film there.
Yeah, so I had a few years of liberal arts education behind me, so I didn't have to do film and art history. I'm not like a drawer though. Like I can like at gunpoint draw a picture, but I like to. It's all out of my head, you know. It's and design seems better, like a better. There's a lot of design and a lot of references to design, and I work in a room full of books, so I'm always looking for specific. I have a lot of design, you know, like those Dover books. I use those a lot.
Yeah, a lot of the archival material of botanicals and that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm interested a little bit too in what your influences were in those early days, or what you bring forward from there.
From art school?
Not necessarily art school, but even traveling, or you know, the things that you're attracted to or compelled by.
Well, I did do a lot of art history, so it's not so much like specific things, but individual things often grab me for unknown reasons. But as a child, we had a woman in the town next to us who had a marionette theater, and that was huge. And also, I mean, I was raised by a single mom, and it was sort of like a lot of things we didn't do, but we had a measure of cultural capital, and we went to the opera, and that was a big deal. I'm very fortunate for that, I think.
So there is that sense of theater that kind of runs through.
That spoke to me, and the stories too, the stories in the operas. But I love Indian miniatures. That's like that was the thing I saw at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. That was a turning point, I feel. I love color, so I love. Right now, I'm in a kind of a Paul Klee moment. I just love artists who are colorists, and I like a lot of folk art. I really love. I don't know. I mean, more direct influences are definitely stories and ideas rather than visual things. But I am a museum goer. Not so much a gallery goer, but more of a museum goer person.
When looking at your paintings, I think, and you've spoken about this a lot, we think fairy tales, myths, you know, archetypes, that kind of thing, and they're almost, some of them are almost like a tableau. Would you say that?
I like that idea of a tableau. It seems they're a little less. I go with that. And I was thinking for a minute that they're not organized enough, but some of them might be.
Yes. Actually, I read this great definition that a tableau is a living picture, a depiction of a scene usually presented on a stage by silent, motionless costume participants.
That is really similar to the Max Luthi thing that I was trying to tell you about of fairy tales, that the it's flat.
Yeah.
It's a flat world. And the character, it's one of the words he uses is depthlessness. There's there's a surfaceness that might, like a tableau might have also, but it's on the surface, and the characters are, you know, a king is a king. It's kind of interchangeable. They don't have depth of character. They don't have depth in their relationships, and they don't actually have visual depth much either. They're like cutouts, kind of. So that idea, that was one thing about fairy tales that is also about my paintings, I think. But Max Luthi, he had all these things. One of them is what he calls one-dimensionality, which really speaks to me. It's that we're not in the real world versus the unreal world. He's talking about the world where supernatural things are normal. So when you meet a dog and it talks to you, you just talk back. You don't, there's no fear of the supernatural. It's integrated into the world. So he calls that one dimensionality, which I kind of liked. And he also has this thing about, I don't remember this exactly, but world containment. So the whole world is contained within a little frame. So trying to put as many like kind of big, heavy, symbolic elements into a small.
I ran across this phrase, and I can't remember where it came from now, but it was about in the realm of paintings to see things differently using useful strangeness.
Oh, where's that from?
I can't remember.
Yeah, that sounds connected to the one dimensionality in a way.
Yes.
Like it's sort of not. It's not real and unreal. It's both are the same.
And they're existing at the same time.
Yeah.
The things that you have pulled things from, the threads that run through. You've mentioned Ethiopian scrolls and the Arabian Nights and the Islamic, Persian, and Indian cultures as well.
Yeah, I'm inspired by the art of those cultures. The Ethiopian scrolls, there's a great book called Art That Heals. It was in the Putney School Library, and it is all about the Ethiopian scrolls. And it seemed like a concept that is in many, many cultures, but it's sort of the evil eye thing. But the scrolls are a household object, and they're individual to the person. So everyone has their own scroll. And if you're sick, you unwind it and hang it up and get well. And so it has power. Yes. So it's sort of talismanic. That appealed to me. The evil eye thing, I was in a phase, and I was really like, I need protection from the evil forces of the world. So but I love that it's a household object. You know, that it's like it maybe this is like a small rebellion against like how ugly is the art world. But just that it's like a utilitarian household object that's doing something.
Ordinary. Yeah, that has power.
And actually, when I wrote a statement about those paintings, I was talking about the original Grimm's fairy tales is called household tales. So it's like, you know, oatmeal, butter, fairy tales. And that it seems like something we need.
Yeah, well, and that's a really interesting place to put all of that too, because it is part of your life. But then there's this other aspect to it, right? That's big and magical. Right. And the evil eye, like it's looking at you when you're looking at it. It's an active thing, and maybe any painting that is a portrait does that too. But when it becomes a two-way street. Yeah, it seems like a really good idea. Yes, and you're connected.
Yeah,
you're connected. Just for a minute, I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about your method, because I know that you layer a lot. You do a lot of different layers of different things.
Yes. Well, I'm perpetually experimenting, so I don't. Like I took off this year, the evil eye year, was all watercolors on antique paper. But I'm kind of back, and this past year I learned egg tempera, which was incredibly laborious and slow, but a good thing to learn, or to sort of learn, to begin to learn.
Do you think you'll use it in your paintings?
I think I've had enough for the moment, but there's something really. Actually, I just varnished all these paintings that I made 6 months ago, and that was fun. Like the varnish, they really
they glow, right?
They spring to life, yeah. And there's a woman, Koo Shadler. Do you know her? Yeah. She gave me she talked to me and gave me, and I got her book. So I'm considering her my teacher, even though I didn't take a workshop. But the paintings that you're referring to, and the ones that you know, there is a lot of layering, and back when I was in Boston, not going to school. This is a thread that like I feel like there is a trajectory, and this is part of it. I took a class called Renaissance painting techniques, and so it was like the techniques that Hieronymus Bosch and Bruegel used, and it was really, really influential, and that's like the most important painting class I ever took. And I've seen the guy who was my teacher, I've seen his paintings in the window of Gallery in the Woods. But his girlfriend at the time worked at the Gardner Museum, and I was looking for a job, so that also opened the door to me working there. But that the technique is an earth-colored ground, lights and darks, a yellow ochre, and then more lights and darks, and then a transparent wash of color at the end. So if you put blue onto these earth colors, it sort of pops and has depth and is very beautiful. And I don't do that, but but this is where I learned this kind of like putting down a ground and building up and seeing through the layers, and the fact that the ground is always earth colored, just the metaphor of it I kind of love. Like it's the earth, it's actually the earth, and something's growing from it.
And a lot of times in your paintings, with the layering thing that we were talking about, you'll have scraps of paper in there, or wallpaper, and different media that you're using at the same time as well.
Yeah, it kind of comes and goes. I have done a lot of that, and in the last few years, I always have a little photographic bit, and I feel like it's partly because my mom was a photographer, but to me it's like the real and unreal thing, and people think photos don't lie, but photos totally lie. And but it's more what we think of as real next to what we think of as unreal, but so it's like a little window.
And again, you've got that juxtaposition going on of the real and the unreal, the fairy tale and the ordinary life, right?
Right. I feel like ideas are inspiring to me, but I never know what I'm going to get. And I'm really not a drawer, so I don't draw. I like, this might be part of the arbitrary thing. Like, I don't draw things in, I kind of fit them in, and I do a lot of looking at it and see where something should go. So I might save myself some time if I planned it out ahead, but I don't do that.
It sounds an awful lot like the process is a huge part of your creativity.
I think that's true. Yeah. I think that's true.
Yeah, and you're discovering things sort of as you go along.
I definitely, I love the process. I'm not, at this phase of my life, I don't feel like I'm working towards something. I'm just working, It's more like it's a byproduct of my life.
Really?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel that.
And part of your life.
Yeah.
You worked on different series. Like you'll get an idea or a concept and you'll start working with that. So you might have several paintings that are similar in some way.
Yes, and this is particularly maybe in the last 10 years. I'm more like, I need structure. Like I need a big idea. I think maybe it started with the Arabian Nights. The blue paintings I wanted it to be like a deck of cards almost. So the fate part, kind of like letting the cards fall where they may, actually played a big role in that. I had this idea from when I was in school and studied film about, there's an Eisenstein essay about cinematography and the ideogram, the Chinese ideogram, and about montage, which is like collage. And so like a bird next to a mouth means to sing. So I thought I was going to make all these paintings, hopefully 52 of them, that would each have an image that could be paired up in many, many different ways and have new meanings by what they were put next to. And this is totally all in my head, because ultimately I'm trying to survive and sell enough paintings to keep the job, you know. So no, you know, whatever, that stuff is backstory. But
it is a driving force, though, right?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a sustaining thing, and it's also a thing that keeps me on, you know, on course, making the body of work and having a vision of it as one thing, not a bunch of little things.
Right.
And I feel like I just like experientially, just being around so much blue, I really learned something about the color blue.
I'll bet you immersed yourself.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed is that probably with the exception perhaps of your abstract work, you've always got a lot of earth elements in there. There's a river, there's a sky, there's the ground, there are flowers. It seems very, as fantastical as they may be, they always feel very grounded.
That's good. This is my challenge, being grounded. I'm thinking about like what comes next, and I was thinking, I'm gonna call them landscapes, so people will go see them and think they're going to see landscapes, but they are landscapes.
Yeah, they are.
I've been listening to thousands of fairy tales for the last couple years, and I'm in this project. I don't know how it will pan out as far as like the object in the end, but I was searching for redemption motifs, which is the thing in the story that breaks the spell. But it can't just be the thing that breaks the spell. It has to be, for me, the thing that breaks the spell and has some great visual possibility.
Right.
So there's an Irish fairy tale where the king has to balance a severed head on top of his head, and that just seemed really great to me, like a portrait but another head up there. So things like that, like looking for a visual, you know, just visual possibility in it. And if I'm able, like this is in the works, I don't know, but if I'm able to make a painting of a redemption motif, maybe it can be like one step up from the evil eye. Like maybe it has the little whiff of redemption in it. I'm just using the material.
And creating perhaps new fairy tales, right?
Well, that would be, I mean, for somebody maybe. For somebody who's looking.
And again, you don't know how, you know, there's always that sort of that mystery of the effect it has on an audience or a person when they hang it in their home. And you don't know about this. Sometimes you probably do.
Right.
You get feedback.
I get some, yeah. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, they could be in storage and things sold on eBay, or I don't know.
Well, there's that as well. And let's just talk a little bit about, we didn't talk about theater and puppets. And you've done some work with sandglass and also in other ways too, right?
Right. Well, sandglass, not so much, unfortunately, but we did do the puppets in the Green Mountains when our kids were little, and that was really fun. I think it was around 2010. Do you remember when the Red Book was in the came here?
Young?
Yeah. So that was in the Rubin Museum. We went to see it. This was leading up to puppets, and I was just totally captivated. So I wanted to read a lot of Carl Jung, and you couldn't get anywhere without reading Faust. I mean, it seemed like he was talking about Faust all the time, especially in the Red Book, which was largely unreadable to me, but it was still, his dialogue was with Philemon, who's the character at the end of Faust. It was all about Faust, and so I thought I didn't think I have to read Faust. I thought we have to do a puppet show of Faust, and I actually got some funding from an individual guy before I read the story. So it was like a Faustian bargain, and then the bargain was with, like, I made a Faustian bargain with Faust because it was so big and there was so much stuff there, and there was no way out. Like because I got funding at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
That was the biggest puppet enterprise,
Yes.
and those are the puppets that
And that was a big piece of theater that you were doing as well.
Yeah, no, it was insane. It's 14 hours long if you read it aloud, and we condensed it to 2 hours, and it was crazy, and there's like 35 puppets, and
but those puppets and marionettes are so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, they were
Yes.
really.
Well, I made the puppets, but Michelle helped. Michelle did the gold, which was
Michelle Rattay.
right.
Yes.
And Julie Jensen helped. Like when it was all in production, they came and helped me, which was really super nice.
That's great. So a while back, probably almost 10 years ago now, you received a Vermont's grant to do something at our courthouse here in Brattleboro. You and Donald.
And Donald, yes. So it is part of the Art and State Buildings program, and they were rehabbing the whole building. Mm-hmm. So we got the job, and it was sort of a year-long job, and I have 3 or 4 paintings upstairs, and then one really giant painting in the stairwell,
Mm-hmm.
and Donald has some downstairs, and then we did there's a hermit thrush on the facade, and a maple tree, well, a tree, but we're going to call it a maple tree. So I did a lot of painting for that, and part of it was just researching this area.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine told me about the water cure.
Yes, right, in Brattleboro.
Yeah, so we were kind of working with the idea that people came here or come here for ideological reasons, you know, like that's it's like the sort of, I don't know if Brattleboro is like pilgrimage site, but that people come here to be healed, you know, like for reasons other than their job brings them here or whatever. And so like the Back to the Landers and
the
so
retreat.
forth. And the
as well,
retreat, yeah, literally to be healed. So we had the vertical painting of the river, and the town is sort of a beehive of with like overlay of town, and there's bees flying around. And I did one that was a what are they called? The our state plant, the red clover.
Oh.
A red clover that was sort of stylized with a bee on every flower. So that was like, I was trying to think about justice. But mostly they're very Vermonty and landscapey.
Yes, and the hermit thrush
and
outside, right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's a painting of the hermit thrush
Nice,
inside.
nice. What do you do or not do to recreate for recreation?
Oh, I like to garden. I mean, in the summer, I'm a pretty serious gardener, as of late. And that's about it. I don't do anything. I'm such a hermit. But yeah, I read.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yep.
a reader.
Yep. Yeah. Yes, and there's a lot of solace in reading, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's enormously comforting.
Julia, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
These are great stories, and for the audience, we will have the information at the end of the show, Julia's website, and also throughout the show there have been pictures of her cutaways to her paintings, so you get kind of an idea of what she's up to. So thank you, Julia. It was great.
Thank you, Wendy.
Good stories, and thanks to all of you for being with us today. This was show number 85, which is pretty exciting for us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.